Hello everyone! This video addresses the idea of World War I as a global war. While it's true that most of the war's conflict took place in Europe, there are two main ways that World War I can be considered a global war. First of all, there was military conflict in the Middle East, Africa, the Pacific, and also submarine warfare in the Atlantic. Second, the war involved global participants, particularly troops and laborers from European colonial possessions. Let's take a closer look at colonial involvement in the war. This image of French soldiers at the beginning of World War I is probably about what comes to mind for most people when they think of World War I soldiers. However, the soldiers and participants were significantly more diverse. Let's take a look at some other images of World War I soldiers. In this image, we see two groups of soldiers, British soldiers mounted on horseback and Indian bicycle troops. The bicycle troops in particular were mainly used to transport messages and supplies. Indian troops participated in World War I because India was a British colony. Within India, such troops were already used to aid the colonial administration. During the course of the war, around 1.4 million Indian soldiers participated in the war. Indian troops were joined by an additional 1.4 million troops drawn from Britain's other colonies and dominions, including British South Africa, Canada, and Australia and New Zealand. The troops shown in this photograph come from Australia and New Zealand, and they were often referred to as Anzac troops. Anzac troops played a special role in the Battle of Gallipoli, which was fought between Allied forces and the Ottoman Empire. Anzac troops in particular took heavy losses from their failed efforts to control the Gallipoli Peninsula and the neighboring Strait of Dardanelles. The British were not the only European power to involve colonial soldiers in the war effort. France enlisted about 600,000 troops from its colonial territories, mostly from Africa. This image shows a group of Senegalese troops that participated in the conflict. In addition to enlisting colonial troops, foreign laborers were also brought in to help with the war effort. Both the British and the French recruited Chinese laborers to help with non-combat activities, such as the delivering of food. This image shows the men moving bags of oats. Over the course of the war, about 140,000 Chinese laborers participated in the war effort. Colonial troops also participated in battles fought in colonial territories, particularly the German possessions in Africa. From early on in the conflict, Allied forces used colonial troops to try to take over the German-controlled territories of Togoland, Namibia, Cameroon, and Tanzania, also known as German East Africa. German authorities fought back using colonial troops of their own. This image shows a company of German-led East African troops. In German East Africa, colonial troops were led by General Paul von Lettow-Vorbeck. Remarkably, Lettow-Vorbeck was able to hold out against much larger British forces until 2 weeks after the signing of the November 1918 armistice that ended the war. Lettow-Vorbeck was technically Germany's last undefeated general. While the number of colonial troops in the conflict was much smaller than the number of European combatants, the participation of these troops both in Europe and in colonial battles demonstrates one way in which World War I had a global impact. The world between 1914 and 1918 was interconnected, and the influence of this European-based conflict reached well around the globe.